The Last Harvest. Autumn, 1973. 8-year-old Faith Caldwell stood in the middle of a vast, golden field, the Virginia sun warm on her face, the scent of freshly cut hay filling the air. Her grandfather, a tall, weathered man with a gentle smile, held her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "This is it, Faith," he said, his voice a low rumble. "This is the harvest. The culmination of all our hard work. The bounty of the land." Faith looked around, her eyes wide with wonder. Tractors rumbled in the distance, combines churned through the fields, and workers bustled about, gathering the fruits of their labor. It was a scene of abundance, of community, of a connection to the land that ran deep in her family's blood. Her grandmother, a strong, resilient woman with a kind heart, joined them, her arms laden with baskets of freshly baked bread and jugs of sweet tea. "Time for a break, you two," she said, her voice warm and welcoming.
"Come and sit a spell.
"And enjoy the fruits of your labor." They sat together under the shade of a sprawling oak tree, sharing food, laughter, and stories. Faith listened, captivated, as her grandparents talked about the history of the farm, about the generations of Caldwells who had tilled the soil, who had built the farmhouse, who had created a legacy that stretched back over a century. "This farm," her grandfather said, his eyes gazing out over the fields, "it's more than just land, Faith. It's our heritage. It's our connection to the past. It's in our blood." Faith didn't fully understand his words then, but she felt the weight of them, the importance, the love that he poured into them. She felt a sense of belonging, of connection, of being a part of something bigger than herself. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the fields, Faith's grandfather took her hand again. "Promise me, Faith," he said, his voice earnest, "that you'll always remember this, that you'll always cherish this land, that you'll keep the family legacy alive." Faith, her young heart filled with love and admiration for her grandparents, nodded solemnly. "I promise, Grandpa," she said. "I promise." It was the last harvest she would share with them on the farm. The last time she would feel that profound sense of connection to her family's history, to the land that had sustained them for generations. A promise made, a legacy entrusted, a memory that would shape her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Chapter 1. Unexpected Inheritance. 50-year-old Faith Caldwell stared at the official-looking letter in her hand, her emotions a turbulent mix of shock, grief, and a weary sense of resignation. Her grandparents, both gone now for many years, had left her their farmhouse. The Caldwell farmhouse. The place where she'd spent her childhood summers, the place where she'd made that solemn promise to her grandfather, the place she hadn't visited in decades. The news came at a particularly difficult time. Faith, a dedicated nurse, had recently lost her job at a Boston hospital due to downsizing, a victim of budget cuts and corporate restructuring. Her finances were strained, her savings dwindling, and her daughter, Olivia, was starting her sophomore year of college, with the accompanying tuition bills looming large. She had been a single mother for most of Olivia's life. Olivia's father had not been the settling type. He was long gone. Her initial thought, born of practicality and a desperate need for financial stability, was to sell the farmhouse. Sell it quickly, pay off her debts, cover Olivia's tuition, and find a new job. It was a logical solution, a responsible solution, a solution that would provide immediate relief. But as she looked at the old photograph she kept on her nightstand, a picture of her as a child, standing between her grandparents in that golden field, a wave of nostalgia, of guilt, of a long-forgotten promise, washed over her. She remembered the feel of the sun on her face, the scent of the freshly cut hay, the sound of her grandfather's voice, the warmth of her grandmother's embrace. She remembered the feeling of belonging, of connection, of being a part of something bigger than herself. Could she really sell the farmhouse? Could she really sever that connection to her family's past, to her own childhood memories, to the legacy that had been entrusted to her? She knew it wouldn't be easy. The farmhouse was old, probably run down, and located in a small, rural town in Virginia, a world away from her life in Boston. It would require time, effort, and money to fix it up, to make it marketable, to find a buyer. But something pulled at her, a sense of duty, of obligation, of a need to reconnect with her roots, to honor her grandparents' memory, to fulfill that promise she had made so many years ago. She decided to go. To go to Virginia, to see the farmhouse, to assess the situation, to make a decision. It was a decision that would change her life, in ways she couldn't yet imagine, a decision that would lead her down a path filled with unexpected challenges, unexpected discoveries, and, perhaps, unexpected love. The unexpected inheritance wasn't just a house, it was a crossroads, a turning point, a chance to reevaluate her life, her priorities, and her connection to the past. The drive to Maple Ridge, Virginia, was a journey through time as much as it was a journey through space. As Faith left the bustling highways behind and entered the quiet, rural landscapes of her childhood, memories flooded back, vivid and poignant. She remembered family picnics by the river, firefly-lit evenings on the porch, the comforting rhythm of farm life, so different from the frenetic pace of her city existence. She passed familiar landmarks, the old general store, the weathered church, the winding country roads lined with ancient oak trees. It was a world that had seemed both distant and incredibly close, a part of her past that she had largely left behind, but that still held a powerful grip on her heart. As she turned onto the long, unpaved driveway leading to the farmhouse, a lump formed in her throat. The house, nestled amidst a grove of towering trees, looked smaller than she remembered and far more dilapidated. The paint was peeling, the porch sagged, the roof was missing shingles, and the surrounding fields were overgrown with weeds. It was a scene of neglect, of abandonment, of a legacy that had been allowed to fade. A wave of sadness, of guilt, washed over her. She had let her grandparents down. She had broken her promise. She parked her car, her hands trembling slightly, her heart pounding with a mixture of apprehension and a strange sense of homecoming. She stepped out, the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves filling her nostrils, a scent that was both familiar and unsettling. She walked towards the house, her footsteps crunching on the gravel path. The front door, a heavy oak affair, was unlocked, as if waiting for her arrival. She pushed it open, a creak echoing through the silent interior. The house was dark and dusty, filled with the musty odor of old furniture and forgotten memories. Cobwebs hung in the corners, dust motes danced in the faint light filtering through the grimy windows, and a sense of stillness, of absence, permeated the air. But beneath the neglect, beneath the decay, Faith could sense the bones of the house, the solid structure, the enduring craftsmanship, the echoes of a life that had once been vibrant and full. She could almost hear her grandmother's laughter, her grandfather's gentle voice, the sounds of family gatherings, of holiday celebrations, of a life lived in harmony with the land. She wandered through the rooms, her fingers tracing the faded wallpaper, the worn floorboards, the antique furniture covered in dust sheets. She found her grandparents' bedroom, their clothes still hanging in the closet, their personal belongings arranged on the dresser, as if they had just stepped out for a moment and would soon return. She found the old family photo albums, filled with pictures of generations of Caldwells, their faces smiling, their eyes filled with hope, their lives intertwined with the history of the farm. She found her own childhood drawings, tucked away in a drawer, a reminder of carefree summers spent exploring the fields and woods. As she explored the house, Faith's initial intention to sell it quickly, to walk away from this place and its memories, began to waver. She felt a connection, a responsibility, a pull towards this place that she couldn't ignore. The farmhouse wasn't just a building, it was a repository of her family's history, a tangible link to her past, a legacy that she was now tasked with preserving or letting go. The decision, she realized, was far more complex, far more emotionally charged than she had initially anticipated. The unexpected inheritance was more than a house, it was a burden, a gift, and a test. Chapter 2. Preservation Order. Faith spent the next few days cleaning the farmhouse, airing it out, and trying to assess the extent of the repairs needed. It was a daunting task, overwhelming at times, but she found a strange satisfaction in the physical labor, in the sense of reclaiming a space that had been neglected for so long. She hired a local contractor, a gruff but reliable man named Jed, to give her an estimate on the renovations. He walked through the house, his experienced eye taking in the cracked walls, the sagging floors, the leaky roof, the outdated plumbing and electrical systems. "It's going to be a lot of work, ma'am," he said, his voice blunt. "And a lot of money. This place needs, well, it needs everything." Faith sighed, her initial optimism fading. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she hadn't realized just how extensive, how costly, the renovations would be.
"Just give me an estimate, Jed," she said.
"A ballpark figure. I need to know what I'm dealing with." Jed nodded, scribbling notes on his clipboard. "I'll get back to you in a day or two," he said. "But I gotta warn you, there's something else you need to know." He paused, his gaze meeting hers. "This house," he said, "it's under a historical preservation order. The town council, they designated it a landmark a few years back. Means you can't just tear it down or make any major changes without their approval." Faith's heart sank. A historical preservation order? That was the last thing she needed. It meant restrictions, regulations, red tape, and potentially even higher costs. It meant she couldn't just flip the house, she was stuck with it, at least for the time being. And that meant facing the historical preservation officer. Who do I need to talk to?" she asked, her voice a little shaky. Jed pointed towards town with his thumb. "Fellow named Jamie Porter," he said. "He's the town's preservation officer. He's pretty serious about this stuff. You'll find him at the town hall." The next morning, Faith drove into Maple Ridge, her stomach churning with a mixture of apprehension and frustration. She found the town hall, a quaint, brick building located on the main square, and asked for Jamie Porter. She was directed to a small office at the back of the building, where a man was sitting at a desk, surrounded by stacks of papers, maps, and historical documents. He looked up as she entered, his eyes, a striking shade of blue, meeting hers. He was younger than she expected, maybe mid-40s, with a ruggedly handsome face, a neatly trimmed beard, and a surprisingly charming smile. He wasn't the stuffy, bureaucratic official she had envisioned. "Ms. Caldwell?" he asked, his voice warm and welcoming.
"I'm Yanya Porter."
"I've been expecting you." He stood up, extending his hand. Faith shook it, feeling a spark of something.
"Surprise?
Attraction? She wasn't sure. "Please sit down," he said, gesturing towards a chair. As she sat, she noticed a framed photograph on his desk. It was a picture of a young girl, maybe 10 or 11 years old, with the same striking blue eyes as Jamie. "Your daughter?" she asked, her voice soft. He nodded, his smile tinged with a hint of sadness.
"Yes," he said.
"That's Lily. She's the reason I do this. The reason I'm so passionate about preserving our history. I want her to grow up in a town that values its heritage, that remembers its past." His words resonated with Faith, reminding her of her own grandparents, of their love for the farmhouse, of their desire to keep the family legacy alive. She realized that Jamie Porter wasn't just a bureaucratic obstacle, he was a man with a deep connection to his community, with a genuine passion for preserving its history. The preservation order wasn't just a regulation, it was a reflection of a community's values, a testament to its identity, a link to its past. And Jamie Porter, the charming, determined preservation officer, was the guardian of that legacy. The clash, she realized, wasn't just about the house, it was about competing visions of the future. Chapter 3. Clashing Visions. Faith explained her situation to Jamie, her recent job loss, her financial pressures, her initial intention to sell the farmhouse quickly. She emphasized her respect for the house's history, but also her need for a practical solution, a way to move forward without incurring overwhelming debt. Jamie listened patiently, his blue eyes focused on her, his expression a mixture of understanding and a firm resolve. He acknowledged her difficulties, but he also made it clear that the historical preservation order was not negotiable. "I understand your situation, Miss Caldwell," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "But the Caldwell farmhouse is one of the oldest and most significant buildings in Maple Ridge. It's a symbol of our town's history, a tangible link to our past. We can't just let it be torn down or drastically altered. He explained the terms of the preservation order, the restrictions on renovations, the requirement to maintain the house's original character, the need to obtain approval from the town council for any significant changes. "We want to work with you, Ms. Caldwell," he said. "We want to help you find a solution that respects both your needs and the historical integrity of the house. But we also have a responsibility to protect our town's heritage." Faith felt a surge of frustration, but she also recognized the sincerity in Jamie's voice, the genuine passion he felt for his work, for his community. She realized that this wasn't just a bureaucratic battle, it was a clash of visions, a conflict between modern practicality and cherished tradition. "I'm not trying to tear it down, Mr. Porter," she said, her voice a little sharper than she intended. "I'm just trying to figure out what to do. I can't afford to restore it to its original glory. I need to be realistic." Jamie leaned forward, his gaze meeting hers. "Call me Jamie," he said, a slight smile playing on his lips. "And maybe there's a middle ground, Faith. Maybe we can find a way to preserve the house's essential character while also making it livable, functional, for you or for someone else." He paused, his expression thoughtful. "There are grants available," he said, "for historical renovations, tax incentives. And we have a community of volunteers, skilled craftsmen, who are passionate about preserving our town's history. They might be willing to help." His offer, his willingness to collaborate, to find a solution, surprised her. She had expected resistance, inflexibility, a bureaucratic wall. Instead, she found a man who was genuinely interested in helping her, in finding a way to balance her needs with the needs of the community. I appreciate that, Jamie," she said, her voice softening. "I'm willing to explore those options. But I need time to figure things out." "Of course," he said, his smile widening. "Take all the time you need. And feel free to call me. Anytime. If you have questions or just want to talk." He handed her his card, his fingers brushing against hers, sending a slight shiver down her spine. It was a simple gesture, a professional courtesy, but it felt different. It felt like a connection, a spark of something more than just a business transaction. The clashing visions weren't just about the house, they were about their own lives, their own priorities, their own approaches to balancing the past with the present. And as Faith left the town hall, clutching Jamie's card, she knew that this encounter, this conflict, this unexpected connection, was going to change her life in ways she couldn't yet foresee. The clash had sparked something more. Chapter 4. Beneath the surface, Faith returned to the farmhouse, her mind buzzing with the information Jamie had shared, with the possibilities he had suggested, and with the unexpected attraction she had felt towards him. She was still determined to find a practical solution, a way to resolve her financial pressures, but she was also starting to see the farmhouse and Maple Ridge through new eyes. She spent the next few days researching historical preservation grants, exploring tax incentives, and learning more about the history of the Caldwell family and their farm. She discovered that the farmhouse wasn't just an old building, it was a repository of stories, a tangible link to a rich and vibrant past. She found old newspaper articles about her ancestors, their contributions to the community, their struggles, their triumphs. She learned about the farm's role in the local economy, its significance as a landmark, its enduring presence as a symbol of Maple Ridge's identity. She also started to appreciate the architectural details of the house, the craftsmanship, the materials, the design elements that reflected the era in which it was built. She saw the beauty beneath the decay, the potential for restoration, the possibility of breathing new life into this old, neglected structure. As she delved deeper into the history of the farmhouse, she also found herself thinking more about Jamie. She admired his passion for preservation, his commitment to his community, his willingness to help her, despite their initial clash of visions. She decided to take him up on his offer and call him, not just with questions about grants and regulations, but also to talk, to get to know him better. She dialed his number, her heart beating a little faster than usual. He answered on the second ring, his voice warm and welcoming.
"Faith," he said.
"It's good to hear from you. How are things going?" They talked for almost an hour, discussing the farmhouse, the preservation process, the history of Maple Ridge, and gradually more personal topics. Faith shared her anxieties about her finances, her concerns about her daughter's college tuition, her feelings of being overwhelmed by the task ahead. Jamie listened patiently, offering words of encouragement, of support, of understanding. He shared his own story, his reasons for becoming a preservation officer, his deep connection to Maple Ridge, his love for its history and its people. He also talked about his daughter, Lily, about his role as a single father, about the challenges and rewards of raising a child on his own. He didn't mention a wife or partner, and Faith found herself wondering about his personal life, about his past relationships. As they talked, Faith felt a growing sense of connection to Jamie, a sense of shared values, of mutual respect, of a burgeoning friendship that was beginning to feel like something more. "Thank you, Jamie," she said, as they were about to end the call. For everything. For your help, for your advice, for listening. "Any time, Faith," he said, his voice soft. I enjoy talking to you. And I'm here for you. Whatever you need." Beneath the surface of their professional interactions, beneath the clash of visions and the practical challenges, a deeper connection was forming, a bond built on shared values, mutual respect, and a growing attraction that neither of them could deny. The farmhouse wasn't just a project, it was becoming a catalyst, bringing them together, forcing them to confront their pasts, and opening up the possibility of a future they hadn't anticipated. Chapter 5. Common Ground. The phone call with Jamie marked a turning point in their relationship. They began to communicate more regularly, not just about the farmhouse and the preservation process, but about their lives, their interests, their hopes, and their fears. Jamie offered to help Faith navigate the complex world of grants and tax incentives, guiding her through the application process, connecting her with relevant resources, and providing invaluable advice based on his experience and expertise. He also started visiting the farmhouse, not just as the town's preservation officer, but as a friend, offering practical assistance with the cleanup and the initial assessment of the necessary repairs. He rolled up his sleeves, working alongside Faith, clearing debris, removing old furniture, and assessing the structural integrity of the building. As they worked together, they discovered a shared sense of humor, a mutual appreciation for hard work, and a growing respect for each other's strengths and vulnerabilities. They learned to communicate effectively, to compromise, to find solutions that balanced Faith's financial constraints with the requirements of the historical preservation order. They also discovered a shared love for the farmhouse, for its history, for its potential. They began to envision a future for the house, not just as a restored landmark, but as a living, breathing space, a place where new memories could be made, where a new chapter in the Caldwell family's story could be written. One afternoon, as they were taking a break from their work, sitting on the porch, drinking iced tea, Jamie turned to Faith. "You know," he said, his voice thoughtful, "this house is starting to feel like home again. Thanks to you." Faith smiled, her heart warmed by his words. "It's starting to feel like home to me too, Jamie," she said. "Even though I haven't lived here in years." He looked at her, his blue eyes searching hers. "What made you decide to come back, Faith?" he asked. "After all this time?" She hesitated, her gaze shifting towards the fields, towards the distant horizon. She thought about her grandfather's words, about the promise she had made, about the legacy she had inherited. I don't know exactly," she said, her voice soft. "It was a combination of things. The job loss, the financial pressures, the need to reconnect with my roots, I guess." She paused, her gaze meeting his. "But I think, deep down," she continued, "I always knew I'd come back. I didn't know when. Or why." Jamie nodded, understanding. "Sometimes," he said, "we need to go away, to find our way back home." His words resonated with her, a profound truth that she was only beginning to grasp. She had left Maple Ridge seeking a different life, a different future. But in doing so, she had lost a part of herself, a connection to her past, to her family, to the land that had shaped her. And now, she was finding her way back, not just to the farmhouse, but to herself, to her roots, to a sense of belonging that she had been searching for all her life. And she was finding it, unexpectedly, with the help of this man, this preservation officer who had initially seemed like an obstacle, but who would become her ally, her friend, and perhaps something more. The common ground wasn't just the physical space of the farmhouse, it was the shared values, the mutual respect, the growing connection that was blossoming between them, a foundation upon which they could build a future together. Chapter 6. Family ties. As Faith and Jamie continued to work together on the farmhouse, their relationship deepened, evolving beyond friendship into something more profound, more intimate. They spent hours talking, sharing stories, discovering common interests, and realizing that their initial clash of visions had masked a deeper connection, a shared set of values, a mutual respect and admiration that was quickly blossoming into love. But Faith was hesitant to fully embrace this new relationship. She was still grappling with the financial pressures, with the uncertainty of her future, and with the responsibility of providing for her daughter, Olivia, who was away at college. She hadn't told Olivia about Jamie yet. She wasn't sure how her daughter would react, how she would feel about her mother starting a new relationship, especially with a man who lived in a small, rural town, so far removed from their life in Boston. One weekend, Olivia came to visit Faith at the farmhouse. It was the first time she had seen the house since she was a child, and she was overwhelmed by a mixture of nostalgia and sadness. "It's smaller than I remember," she said, her voice a little wistful. "And it needs a lot of work." Faith nodded, her heart aching for her daughter, for the memories they both shared of this place, for the changes that had occurred in their lives. "It does," Faith said, "but it also has a lot of potential. And a lot of history." She showed Olivia around the house, pointing out the architectural details, sharing stories about her grandparents, about her own childhood experiences on the farm. She also told her about the historical preservation order, about the challenges she faced in renovating the house, about the grants she was applying for, about the community of volunteers who were helping her. She didn't mention Jamie. Not yet. Olivia listened patiently, her expression thoughtful, but she also seemed distant, preoccupied. "So," she said, finally, "what are you going to do, Mom? Are you going to stay here? In Virginia?" Faith hesitated, her gaze meeting her daughter's. She knew this was the question Olivia had been wanting to ask, the question that had been hanging in the air between them. I don't know, honey," she said, her voice honest. I'm still figuring things out." Olivia nodded, her expression unreadable. "Well," she said, "you know I support you, Mom. Whatever you decide. But I don't want you to be lonely. Or to give up on your dreams." Her words touched Faith deeply. She realized that her daughter, despite her own anxieties and uncertainties, was more concerned about her mother's happiness than about her own preferences or convenience. It also dawned on her that Olivia knew something was happening. It was time. "There's someone I want you to meet," Faith said. Faith introduced Olivia to Jamie later that day. The three of them had dinner together at the farmhouse, a simple meal of grilled chicken and salad, eaten on the porch, overlooking the fields. Jamie was charming and attentive, engaging Olivia in conversation, asking about her studies, her interests, her plans for the future. He didn't try to force a connection, didn't try to act like a father figure, but instead simply treated her with respect, with kindness, with a genuine interest that slowly won her over. Olivia, initially reserved and cautious, gradually warmed up to Jamie, responding to his easygoing manner, his sense of humor, and his obvious affection for her mother. She saw the way he looked at Faith, the way he listened to her, the way he supported her, and she realized that this was a man who truly cared about her mother, who respected her, who made her happy. As the evening drew to a close, Olivia turned to Faith, a small smile playing on her lips. He's nice, Mom," she said. "I like him." Faith's heart swelled with relief and gratitude. Her daughter's approval meant the world to her, and it was a crucial step towards building a future with Jamie, a future that included her family, her past, and her newfound love. The family ties weren't just about blood relations, they were about the chosen family, the connections forged through shared experiences, mutual respect, and a growing love that was beginning to bind them together. Chapter 7. The Cost of Dreams. With Olivia's approval, Faith felt a sense of relief, a weight lifted from her shoulders. She could now fully embrace her relationship with Jamie, her growing love for him, and her commitment to building a new life in Maple Ridge. But the practical realities of her situation remained: the financial pressures, the daunting task of renovating the farmhouse, the uncertainty of her future career path. She had received some good news. One of the historical preservation grants had been approved, but it wasn't enough to cover all the costs. She and Jamie spent hours discussing their options, exploring different scenarios, trying to find a solution that would allow her to keep the farmhouse, to restore it to its former glory, and to create a sustainable future for herself and Olivia. Jamie suggested that she consider turning the farmhouse into a bed and breakfast, a way to generate income while also preserving its historical character. He pointed out that Maple Ridge was a popular tourist destination, with its charming town square, its scenic beauty, and its proximity to historical sites. Faith was intrigued by the idea, but also apprehensive. She had no experience in the hospitality industry, and she was worried about the financial risks involved, the potential for failure. "I don't know, Jamie," she said, her voice filled with doubt. It's a big undertaking, and I'm not sure I'm cut out for it." Jamie reached out, taking her hand in his. His touch was warm, reassuring. "You're cut out for anything you set your mind to, Faith," he said, his voice firm. "You're strong, you're resilient, you're a Caldwell. And Caldwells don't give up easily." He smiled, his eyes twinkling. "Besides," he added, "you wouldn't be alone. I'd be there, every step of the way. And we have a whole community ready to support you." His words, his unwavering belief in her, gave her courage. She thought about her grandparents, about their hard work, their dedication to the farm, their resilience in the face of adversity. She thought about her daughter, about the future she wanted to provide for her. She realized that she couldn't let fear hold her back, that she couldn't let financial pressures dictate her choices, that she had to take a chance, to embrace the unknown, to pursue her dreams, even if they seemed daunting, even if they seemed impossible. "Okay," she said, her voice stronger now, her heart filled with a renewed sense of determination. "Let's do it. Let's turn the farmhouse into a bed and breakfast." Jamie grinned, his eyes shining with excitement. "That's my girl," he said. "I knew you could do it." But even as they celebrated their decision, a shadow of worry lingered in Faith's mind. The cost of their dreams wasn't just financial, it was emotional. Taking on this project meant committing fully to Maple Ridge, to a life very different from the one she had known. It meant facing the past, embracing the present, and stepping boldly into an uncertain future. Could she handle the pressure? Was she truly ready for this level of commitment? The answer, she knew, would lie not just in the renovations, but in the strength of their relationship and their shared vision for the future. Chapter 8. Letting go the decision to turn the farmhouse into a bed and breakfast marked a significant turning point, not just for the future of the property, but also for Faith's personal journey. It was a commitment to staying in Maple Ridge, to embracing a new life, to building a future with Jamie and integrating herself more fully into the community. But before she could fully embrace this new chapter, Faith knew that she needed to let go of the past, to release the emotional baggage she had been carrying, the regrets, the what-ifs, the lingering attachment to her former life in Boston. She had kept her condo in Boston, a safety net, a symbol of her independence, a reminder of the life she had built for herself and Olivia. But now, it felt like a burden, a tie to a past that was no longer serving her, a distraction from the present and the future she was creating in Maple Ridge. She decided to sell the condo, a decision that was both practical and symbolic. It would provide much-needed funds for the farmhouse renovations, and it would also free her emotionally, allowing her to fully commit to her new life, to her new relationship, to her new community. She flew back to Boston for a week, to pack up her belongings, to arrange for the sale, to say goodbye to the city that had been her home for so many years. It was a bittersweet experience, filled with memories, with a sense of closure, with a recognition that she was closing a chapter in her life and embarking on a new adventure. As she sorted through her possessions, she came across a box of old photographs, mementos of her marriage to Olivia's father, a relationship that had ended long ago, but that still held a residue of regret, of unspoken pain. She looked at the pictures, at the smiling faces, at the illusion of happiness that they projected, and she realized that she had been holding on to those memories, not out of love, but out of a sense of obligation, of a need to justify the choices she had made, of a fear of letting go of the past completely. She took a deep breath, her heart aching with a mixture of sadness and a profound sense of release. She knew what she had to do. She gathered the photographs, the letters, the mementos of her past relationship, and she took them outside, to the small balcony of her condo. She lit a match, her hand trembling slightly, and she set the pile on fire, watching as the flames consumed the images, the words, the tangible reminders of a life that was no longer hers. It was a symbolic act, a ritual of letting go, of releasing the past, of freeing herself from the emotional baggage that had been holding her back. It was a painful act, but also a liberating one, a necessary step towards embracing her new life, her new love, her new future. As the ashes swirled in the wind, Faith felt a sense of peace, of closure, of a renewed sense of purpose. She was ready now, truly ready, to return to Maple Ridge, to the farmhouse, to Jamie, to the life that was waiting for her. Letting go wasn't about forgetting, it was about releasing, about making space for new memories, new experiences, new love. And as she watched the last embers fade, she knew that she was finally free to embrace the future, with all its uncertainties and all its possibilities. Chapter 9. Building bridges. Faith's return to Maple Ridge after selling her condo and symbolically letting go of her past marked a new level of commitment, both to the farmhouse project and to her relationship with Jamie. She felt lighter, freer, more focused on the present and the future, less burdened by the regrets and what-ifs that had haunted her for so long. She and Jamie threw themselves into the renovations, working side by side with Jed and a growing team of volunteers from the community. They made decisions about the layout, the design, the decor, their visions merging, their individual tastes complementing each other, creating a plan that honored the farmhouse's history while also incorporating modern amenities and a sense of warmth and welcome. Jamie, with his knowledge of historical preservation, ensured that the renovations adhered to the guidelines, preserving the original character of the house while also making it functional and comfortable for future guests. He sourced reclaimed materials, researched period-appropriate details, and worked closely with local craftsmen to ensure that the restoration was both authentic and sustainable. Faith, with her practical skills as a nurse and her growing understanding of the hospitality industry, focused on the interior design, creating a space that was both beautiful and inviting, a place where guests could relax, reconnect, and feel at home. She chose colors, fabrics, and furnishings that reflected the farmhouse's history, but also incorporated a sense of modern comfort and style. As they worked together, their relationship deepened, their bond strengthened by shared purpose, mutual respect, and a growing love that infused every aspect of their lives. They learned to communicate effectively, to compromise, to support each other through the challenges and celebrate the successes, big and small. They also focused on building bridges with the community, attending local events, volunteering their time, and getting to know their neighbors. They wanted the farmhouse to be more than just a bed and breakfast. They wanted it to be a part of the town, a gathering place, a symbol of Maple Ridge's hospitality and its commitment to preserving its heritage. One evening, as they were sitting on the porch, exhausted but exhilarated after a long day of work, Jamie turned to Faith. "You know," he said, his voice thoughtful, "this house, it's not just being renovated. It's being reborn. And so are we." Faith smiled, her heart filled with love and gratitude for this man, for this place, for this new life she was building. "I think you're right, Jamie," she said, her voice soft. We're building something new, something beautiful, something that will last." She paused, her gaze meeting his. And we're doing it together," she added, her voice filled with emotion. He reached out, taking her hand in his. His touch was warm, familiar, a constant reassurance of their enduring bond. "Together," he repeated, his voice firm. "Always." The building bridges wasn't just about connecting with the community, it was about strengthening the foundation of their relationship, about creating a partnership that could withstand the challenges, the pressures, the inevitable ups and downs of life. And as they sat there, hand in hand, watching the sunset over the fields, they knew that they were building something that would last, something that would transcend the physical structure of the farmhouse and become a testament to their love, their resilience, and their shared commitment to a future filled with hope and happiness. Chapter 10. Small Town Secrets. As the renovations progressed and Faith and Jamie became more integrated into the Maple Ridge community, they began to uncover snippets of local history, stories and anecdotes about the Caldwell family and the farmhouse that had been passed down through generations. They learned that Faith's grandparents, while respected members of the community, had also been known for their eccentricities. Her grandmother, it was said, had a secret recipe for moonshine that was legendary throughout the county. Her grandfather, a quiet and reserved man, was rumored to have been involved in a clandestine affair with a woman from a neighboring town. These stories, while amusing, also hinted at a deeper, more complex history, a past that wasn't always as idyllic as Faith had imagined. They also discovered some old feuds. One evening, as they were having dinner at the local diner, they overheard a conversation between two older men sitting at a nearby table. "That Caldwell place," one of the men said, his voice a low grumble, "should have been torn down years ago. Nothing but trouble, that family." The other man nodded in agreement. "Remember that feud with the Millers?"
he said.
"Over that water rights issue? Went on for years. Nasty business." Faith and Jamie exchanged a look, their curiosity piqued. They hadn't heard anything about a feud with the Millers. After the men had left, Faith approached the diner's owner, a friendly woman named Betty, who seemed to know everything about everyone in town. "Betty," Faith said, "we overheard those men talking about a feud between the Caldwells and the Millers.
Do you know anything about that?"
Betty's eyes widened slightly, a mixture of surprise and a hint of reluctance. "Oh, that," she said, her voice lowering slightly. "That's ancient history, honey. Happened way before your time." She paused, her gaze shifting around the diner, as if checking to see if anyone was listening. "It was about water rights," she continued, her voice barely a whisper. "The Caldwells and the Millers, they owned adjoining properties. And there was a spring right on the boundary line. Both families claimed it. And well, things got ugly." She explained that the feud had escalated over the years, involving legal battles, property disputes, and even, according to local legend, a few fistfights and acts of sabotage. The animosity between the two families had become a part of the town's folklore, a story passed down through generations. "It all died down eventually," Betty said. "Most of the Millers moved away. But there's still some bad blood, I reckon. Some folks, they hold grudges. For a long time." The conversation left Faith and Jamie with a sense of unease, a feeling that they were stepping into a history that was more complicated, more fraught with conflict than they had realized. The small town secrets weren't just quaint anecdotes, they were reminders of past grievances, of unresolved conflicts, of the enduring power of family feuds to shape lives and relationships, even across generations. They knew that uncovering these secrets, understanding the complexities of the past, was crucial to their efforts to restore the farmhouse, to integrate themselves into the community, and to build a future that was free from the shadows of old animosities. But they also knew that it wouldn't be easy, that they might encounter resistance, opposition, and even hostility from those who were still clinging to the grudges of the past. The farmhouse, they were realizing, was more than just a building. It was a symbol, a focal point of a history that was both beautiful and troubled, a history that they were now a part of, whether they liked it or not. Chapter 11. The heart of the home. The discovery of the long-standing feud between the Caldwells and the Millers added another layer of complexity to Faith and Jamie's already challenging task of renovating the farmhouse and integrating themselves into the Maple Ridge community. They decided to approach the subject cautiously, gathering more information, talking to other residents, and trying to understand the origins and the implications of the feud. They didn't want to stir up old animosities, but they also knew that ignoring the past wasn't an option. As they continued working on the farmhouse, They focused on the interior, on creating a space that was both beautiful and functional, a place that would welcome guests and make them feel at home. They decided to keep the original layout of the house as much as possible, preserving its historical character while also incorporating modern amenities. The heart of the home, they both agreed, was the kitchen. It was a large, spacious room with a massive fireplace, a worn wooden floor, and large windows that overlooked the fields. It was a space that had clearly been the center of family life, a place where generations of Caldwells had gathered to share meals, to tell stories, to connect with each other. Faith, drawing on her memories of her grandmother's kitchen, envisioned a warm, inviting space with a large farmhouse table, comfortable chairs, and modern appliances that blended seamlessly with the antique features of the room. She wanted to create a kitchen that was both functional and aesthetically pleasing, a place where guests could gather, cook, eat, and feel a sense of connection to the farmhouse's history. Jamie, with his expertise in historical preservation, helped her choose materials and finishes that were both authentic and durable. They found reclaimed wood for the countertops, antique fixtures for the lighting, and a vintage-style stove that became the centerpiece of the room. As they worked on the kitchen, they also started planning the guest rooms, designing each one with a unique theme, reflecting different aspects of the farmhouse's history and the surrounding landscape. They wanted to create a space that was more than just a place to sleep. They wanted to create an experience, a connection to the past, a sense of place. One evening, as they were sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by paint samples, fabric swatches, and design sketches, Faith turned to Jamie. "You know," she said, her voice thoughtful, "this house, it's not just about the past. It's about the future, too. It's about creating something new, something that will last, something that will connect people." Jamie smiled, his eyes filled with love and admiration. "That's exactly what we're doing, Faith," he said. "We're building a bridge between the past and the present, between your family's history and our future." He reached out, taking her hand in his. His touch was warm, familiar, a constant reassurance of their enduring bond. And he added, his voice soft, "We're creating a home, not just for our guests, but for us, for our family." The heart of the home wasn't just the kitchen, it was the love, the connection, the shared vision that was growing between them, a foundation upon which they were building not just a bed and breakfast, but a life, a future, a family. And as they looked at each other, surrounded by the remnants of the past and the promise of the future, they knew that they were creating something truly special, something that would endure, something that would honor the legacy of the Caldwell farmhouse and create a new legacy of their own. Chapter 12. Turning points. As the renovations progressed, Faith and Jamie reached several turning points, both in their relationship and in their understanding of the farmhouse and its place in the community. One significant turning point came with the discovery of a hidden room in the attic. They had been clearing out the space, preparing it for insulation, when Jamie noticed an irregularity in one of the walls. He tapped on it, and it sounded hollow. With Faith's help, he carefully removed a section of the wall, revealing a small, secret room that had been hidden for decades. The room was dusty and filled with cobwebs, but it contained a treasure trove of old documents, letters, photographs, and artifacts that shed new light on the Caldwell family history. They found old diaries, written by Faith's great-grandmother, detailing her life on the farm, her struggles, her joys, her relationships with her neighbors, including the Millers. They found letters from Faith's grandfather, written during his time serving in World War II, expressing his love for his family, his longing for home, his fears for the future. They also found a collection of old photographs showing generations of Caldwells, their faces reflecting the hardships and the triumphs of their lives. And, to their surprise, they found a few photographs that included members of the Miller family, pictures taken before the feud, showing the two families together, smiling, sharing meals, celebrating holidays. The discovery of the hidden room was a turning point, not just in their understanding of the farmhouse's history, but also in their relationship with the past. It humanized the feud, revealing the complexities of the relationships, the shared experiences, the common humanity that had been overshadowed by years of animosity. Another turning point came with a conversation with old Mr. Abernathy, a local historian who had known Faith's grandparents and had a deep knowledge of Maple Ridge's history. Mr. Abernathy shared stories about the Caldwells and the Millers, about their initial friendship, their shared struggles during the Depression, their eventual falling out over the water rights issue. He explained that the feud had been fueled by misunderstandings, by stubborn pride, by a failure to communicate, to compromise, to forgive. "It's a sad story, really," Mr. Abernathy said, his voice filled with regret. Two good families, torn apart by something that could have been resolved. If only they'd been willing to talk to each other, to see each other's point of view. His words resonated with Faith and Jamie, reminding them of the importance of communication, of empathy, of forgiveness, in any relationship, whether it be between families, neighbors, or lovers. These turning points, both the discovery of the hidden room and the conversation with Mr. Abernathy, deepened their understanding of the farmhouse's history, of the complexities of human relationships, and of the enduring power of the past to shape the present. They also strengthened their resolve to build a future that was free from the shadows of old animosities, a future where communication, understanding, and forgiveness could prevail. The turning points weren't just about discoveries, they were about perspective, about gaining a deeper understanding of the past, and using that understanding to shape a more positive future. Chapter 13. A matter of trust. Armed with a deeper understanding of the Caldwell-Miller feud and a renewed commitment to fostering reconciliation, Faith and Jamie decided to take a proactive approach. They knew that simply renovating the farmhouse and opening a bed and breakfast wouldn't be enough to heal the old wounds that still lingered in the community. They needed to address the feud directly, to try to bridge the gap between the two families, to create a space for dialogue, for understanding, for forgiveness. They started by researching the Miller family, trying to find out if any descendants still lived in the area. They discovered that a branch of the Millers still owned a farm on the other side of Maple Ridge, a property that had been in the family for generations. They decided to reach out, to extend an olive branch, to invite the Millers to visit the Caldwell farmhouse, to share their memories, to talk about the past, and perhaps to find a way to move forward. It was a risky move. They didn't know how the Millers would react. They might be met with hostility, with suspicion, with a refusal to engage. But they felt it was a risk worth taking, a necessary step towards healing the community, towards honoring the legacy of their families, towards building a future based on understanding and respect. Faith drafted a letter, carefully wording it to be both respectful and inviting. She emphasized their shared history, their common connection to the land, their desire to learn more about the past, and their hope for reconciliation. Jamie added his own note, expressing his commitment to preserving the history of Maple Ridge, to fostering a sense of community, to creating a space where all residents could feel welcome and valued. They sent the letter, their hearts pounding with a mixture of apprehension and hope. They waited, unsure of what to expect, bracing themselves for a negative response, but also clinging to the possibility of a positive outcome. The response came a few days later, in the form of a phone call. It was from a woman named Eleanor Miller, the current matriarch of the Miller family. Her voice was cautious, hesitant, but also curious.
"We received your letter," she said.
"And well, we've talked about it. We were willing to meet, to see the farmhouse." Faith and Jamie were relieved and excited. It was a start, a small step towards reconciliation, a crack in the wall of animosity that had separated the two families for so long. They arranged a meeting, a visit to the Caldwell farmhouse, a chance to talk, to share memories, to see if they could find some common ground, some basis for understanding, some hope for a future free from the bitterness of the past. It was a matter of trust, not just between the two families, but also between Faith and Jamie. They were taking a leap of faith, venturing into unknown territory, risking rejection and conflict. But they were doing it together, united by their love for each other, by their commitment to the community, by their belief in the power of forgiveness and reconciliation. The farmhouse, once a symbol of division, was now becoming a symbol of hope, a place where old wounds could be healed and new connections could be forged. Chapter 14. The past's presence. The day of the Millers' visit arrived. filled with a mix of anticipation, nervousness, and a quiet hope for reconciliation. Faith and Jamie had prepared the farmhouse, ensuring it was clean, welcoming, and showcased its historical charm. They had also prepared themselves emotionally, bracing for a potentially awkward or even hostile encounter, but also determined to remain open, respectful, and committed to finding common ground. Eleanor Miller arrived with her son, David, and his teenage daughter, Sarah. Eleanor was a woman in her late 70s, with a dignified bearing, a sharp gaze, and a hint of sadness in her eyes. David, in his early 50s, was more reserved, his expression cautious, his body language guarded. Sarah, curious and open-minded, seemed to be the most receptive to the idea of reconciliation. Faith and Jamie greeted them warmly, welcoming them to the Caldwell farmhouse, offering them refreshments, and trying to create a relaxed and comfortable atmosphere. They started with a tour of the house, Faith pointing out the architectural details, the historical features, the renovations they had undertaken, and sharing stories about her grandparents and their life on the farm. Eleanor listened attentively, her gaze sweeping over the rooms, her expression a mixture of nostalgia, curiosity, and a lingering sense of something else. Resentment? Regret? It was hard to tell. David remained mostly silent, his arms crossed, his body language conveying a sense of skepticism and distrust. Sarah, however, was more engaged, asking questions, expressing interest in the history of the house, and even offering a few tentative smiles. As they reached the living room, Eleanor paused, her gaze fixed on an old portrait hanging above the fireplace. It was a painting of Faith's great-grandparents, the original owners of the farmhouse. They look so proud, Eleanor said, her voice soft, a hint of wistfulness in her tone. So determined. Faith nodded, her heart aching for this woman, for the shared history that had been marred by conflict and animosity. Faith said, they built this house, this farm, with their own hands. They faced a lot of challenges, but they persevered. Eleanor turned to Faith, her eyes searching hers. My grandfather, he used to talk about them, she said. About the feud. He always said it was their fault. The Caldwells. That they stole the water. Faith took a deep breath, knowing that this was the crux of the matter, the source of the long-standing animosity. I've been reading about it, Eleanor, Faith said, her voice gentle but firm. And I think there were misunderstandings. On both sides. I think both families made mistakes. David shifted his weight, his expression hardening. Mistakes? He said, his voice laced with skepticism. They cheated us, Miss Caldwell. Plain and simple. Jamie stepped forward, his voice calm and reassuring. David, he said, we're not here to relitigate the past. We're here to understand it. To learn from it. And to see if we can move forward. Together. He paused, his gaze meeting Eleanor's. Eleanor, he said, we know this is difficult. But we believe that it's time to let go of the old grudges. To build a new relationship. Based on respect. And on a shared love for this land. The past's presence was palpable, a heavy weight in the room, a reminder of the generations of conflict, of the bitterness that had separated the two families. But in that moment, in that farmhouse, surrounded by the echoes of the past, a new possibility emerged, a chance for healing, for reconciliation, for a future where the Caldwells and the Millers could finally find peace. The farmhouse, once a symbol of their division, could now become a place of meeting, of understanding, of a new beginning. Chapter 15. Unexpected help. Eleanor Miller, after a long moment of silence, slowly nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and a flicker of something else. Hope. I've carried this anger for so long, she said, her voice trembling slightly. This resentment. It's been a burden. On all of us. She looked at Faith, her gaze searching, questioning. My grandfather, he always said the Caldwells were arrogant. Selfish. That they didn't care about anyone but themselves. Faith took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. I can't speak for my great-grandfather, Eleanor, she said. But I can tell you about my grandparents. They were kind, generous people. They cared deeply about this community, about their neighbors. She paused, her gaze meeting Eleanor's. And I believe, she continued, her voice firm, that they would have wanted this feud to end. They would have wanted us to find a way to get along. David, who had remained silent and skeptical throughout the conversation, finally spoke. It's easy to say that now, he said, his voice laced with bitterness. But the damage is done. The water rights, they were crucial to our farm. We lost everything because of them. Jamie stepped forward, his voice calm and reassuring. David, he said, I understand your anger, your resentment, but holding on to it, it's not going to change the past. It's only going to poison the future. He paused, his gaze meeting David's. We've been doing some research, he continued, about the water rights issue. And we've discovered something that might change your perspective. He explained that they had found old documents, surveys, and legal records that showed the original agreement between the two families, an agreement that had been misinterpreted, misremembered over the years. The documents showed that the water rights had been intended to be shared, not exclusive to either family. The spring, Jamie said, it was meant to be a source of life. For both farms. For the whole community. He paused, letting his words sink in. The feud, he continued, it was based on a misunderstanding.
A mistake.
A failure to communicate. David looked stunned, his expression a mixture of disbelief and a dawning realization. Eleanor, her eyes filled with tears, reached out and took her son's hand. David, she said, her voice soft but firm, maybe it's time.
To let go.
To forgive. Unexpected help came from the most unlikely source. Sarah, David's teenage daughter. Throughout the tense discussion, she had been quietly observing, listening, absorbing the weight of the history that had shaped her family. Now, she spoke up, her voice clear and surprisingly mature. Dad, she said, Grandma's right. We can't keep living in the past. It's hurting us. It's hurting everyone. She looked at Faith and Jamie, her eyes filled with a genuine desire for reconciliation.
I want to get to know you, she said.
I wanted to be friends. I want us to be neighbors. Like we were supposed to be. Her words, spoken with such innocence and sincerity, broke through the remaining barriers, the lingering resentment, the years of accumulated bitterness. David, finally, relented, his shoulders slumping, his expression softening. Maybe you're right, Sarah, he said, his voice hoarse. Maybe it's time. The unexpected help wasn't just the historical documents, it was Sarah, the young woman who represented the future, who saw the futility of the feud, who dared to speak up, to challenge the past, and to offer a bridge towards a new, more hopeful future. And as the two families stood there, in the Caldwell farmhouse, surrounded by the echoes of their shared history, they took the first tentative steps towards reconciliation, towards healing, towards a future where the past would no longer dictate the present. Chapter 16. Renewed hope. The tentative reconciliation between the Caldwells and the Millers, sparked by Sarah's heartfelt plea and the revelation of the misinterpreted water rights agreement, marked a turning point, not just for the two families, but for the entire community of Maple Ridge. Faith and Jamie, with Eleanor and David's cautious cooperation, organized a meeting at the town hall, inviting all residents to attend. They presented their findings, sharing the historical documents, explaining the original intention of the water rights agreement, and offering a vision for a future where the two families and the entire town could move forward together. The meeting was emotional, filled with moments of tension, of anger, of regret, but also of hope, of forgiveness, of a growing willingness to let go of the past and embrace a new beginning. Older residents shared their memories of the feud, recounting stories of conflict and animosity, but also expressing a weariness with the long-standing division, a desire for peace and reconciliation. Younger residents, like Sarah Miller and Olivia Caldwell, who had returned for a visit, spoke passionately about the need to break the cycle of resentment, to build a future based on understanding, respect, and cooperation. Faith and Jamie facilitated the discussion, guiding the conversation, offering a neutral perspective, and emphasizing the shared history, the common values, the interconnectedness of the community. Eleanor Miller, her voice trembling slightly, stood up and addressed the gathering. "I've carried this anger for so long," she said, her eyes filled with tears. This belief that the Caldwells were our enemies. But I see now that we were all victims of a misunderstanding, of our own stubborn pride. She looked at Faith, her gaze filled with a mixture of apology and gratitude. "I'm sorry, Faith," she said, for everything.
For holding on to the past.
For not reaching out sooner." Faith stepped forward, embracing Eleanor, her heart filled with compassion and forgiveness. "It's okay, Eleanor," she said, her voice soft. "It sits in the past. We're moving forward. Together." David Miller, his expression still guarded but noticeably softened, also spoke, expressing his regret for the years of animosity, his willingness to work towards a better future, his hope for a renewed relationship between the two families. The meeting concluded with a sense of cautious optimism, a shared commitment to building a stronger, more united community, a future where the Caldwells and the Millers could be neighbors, friends, and perhaps, even, someday, family. As Faith and Jamie walked home that evening, hand in hand, the stars shining brightly above them, they felt a profound sense of accomplishment, of having played a part in healing a long-standing wound, in bringing reconciliation to their community, in creating a space for forgiveness and understanding. The renewed hope wasn't just about the two families, it was about the entire town, about the possibility of overcoming division, of embracing a shared future, of building a community based on respect, cooperation, and a willingness to learn from the mistakes of the past. And as they looked at each other, their hearts filled with love and gratitude, they knew that their journey, their love story, their commitment to Maple Ridge, was just beginning. Chapter 17. Beyond the blueprints, with the reconciliation between the Caldwells and the Millers underway, and the community of Maple Ridge embracing a spirit of unity and cooperation, Faith and Jamie turned their attention back to the farmhouse renovations, their vision expanding beyond the initial plans for a simple bed and breakfast. Inspired by the renewed sense of community and the growing interest in the history of the farm, they decided to incorporate a small museum into the design, a space where visitors could learn about the Caldwell family, the Miller family, and the shared history of Maple Ridge. They envisioned interactive exhibits, displays of historical artifacts, and storytelling sessions that would bring the past to life. They also decided to create a community garden on the property, a place where residents could come together to grow vegetables, flowers, and herbs, fostering a sense of connection to the land and to each other. They saw it as a way to honor the agricultural heritage of the farm and to promote sustainable practices within the community. As they revised their plans, incorporating these new ideas, they realized that the farmhouse was becoming more than just a bed and breakfast. It was becoming a community hub, a place of learning, of connection, of celebration of the past, and a commitment to the future. They worked closely with local craftsmen, architects, and historians, ensuring that the renovations remained true to the historical character of the house, while also incorporating modern amenities and sustainable design principles. They used reclaimed materials whenever possible, sourcing wood, stone, and other elements from local sources, further connecting the farmhouse to its surroundings. The renovation project became a community effort, with volunteers from all walks of life offering their time, their skills, and their enthusiasm. The Millers, including Eleanor, David, and Sarah, became regular participants, working alongside the Caldwells, their shared labor a tangible symbol of their newfound reconciliation. As the farmhouse neared completion, Faith and Jamie found themselves spending more and more time discussing their own future, their plans for marriage, for a family, for a life together in Maple Ridge. They had found their home, not just in the physical structure of the farmhouse, but in each other's arms, in the community that had embraced them, in the shared vision they were creating. One evening, as they were standing on the porch, admiring the newly installed windows, Jamie turned to Faith. He said, his voice soft, "We've been so focused on the blueprints, on the renovations, on the physical structure of this house. But it's more than that, isn't it?" Faith smiled, her heart filled with love and understanding. "It is," she said. "It's about the people, the connections, the memories we're making." He reached out, taking her hand in his. His touch was warm, familiar, a constant reassurance of their enduring bond. "It's about building a life, Faith," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "Together. A life that goes beyond the blueprints. A life that's filled with love, with laughter, with purpose." The beyond the blueprints wasn't just about the physical renovations, it was about the relationships, the community, the shared vision that was emerging, a vision that extended far beyond the walls of the farmhouse and into the heart of Maple Ridge. And as they stood there, hand in hand, watching the sunset over the fields, they knew that they were building something truly special, something that would last, something that would honor the past and embrace the future, together. Chapter 18. The auction. As the farmhouse renovations neared completion, Faith and Jamie faced a significant financial hurdle. While they had secured some grants and received generous support from the community, they were still short of the funds needed to finish the project and furnish the bed and breakfast to the standard they envisioned. They discussed various options, loans, investors, fundraising events, but none of them seemed quite right. They wanted to maintain control of the project, to avoid incurring excessive debt, and to keep the farmhouse true to its original spirit. Then, Olivia, who was visiting for the weekend, suggested an idea. "Why don't you have an auction?"
she said.
"A fundraising auction. You could auction off items from the farmhouse. Antiques, collectibles, things that you don't need for the bed and breakfast. And you could also ask local businesses to donate items or services." The idea was brilliant, a way to raise funds, engage the community, and clear out some of the accumulated clutter that had filled the farmhouse for generations. Faith and Jamie embraced the idea enthusiastically. They started sorting through the remaining items in the house, identifying antiques, collectibles, and other objects that might be of interest to potential bidders. They found old furniture, vintage tools, antique kitchenware, quilts, and even a few pieces of jewelry that had belonged to Faith's grandmother. They also reached out to local businesses, artisans, and craftspeople, asking for donations of goods and services. The response was overwhelming. The community, inspired by the farmhouse project and the reconciliation between the Caldwells and the Millers, rallied to support their efforts. Donations poured in, ranging from handmade quilts and pottery to gift certificates for local restaurants and shops. They organized the auction, transforming the barn into a festive event space, decorating it with lights, flowers, and banners. They advertised the event throughout the town and beyond, using social media, local newspapers, and word of mouth to generate excitement and anticipation. The day of the auction arrived, bright and sunny, the air filled with a sense of community spirit and anticipation. People from all walks of life, from Maple Ridge and beyond, gathered in the barn, eager to bid on the items, to support the farmhouse project, and to be a part of this special event. Faith and Jamie, dressed in their best clothes, greeted the guests, their faces beaming with gratitude and excitement. They mingled with the crowd, sharing stories about the farmhouse, about their plans for the future, about the importance of preserving local history and building a strong community. The auctioneer, a local character with a booming voice and a quick wit, started the bidding, his energy infectious, his enthusiasm contagious. The bidding was lively, competitive, and often humorous, with people vying for the items, not just for their intrinsic value, but also for the connection they represented to the farmhouse, to the community, to the past. As the auction progressed, Faith and Jamie watched with a mixture of amazement and gratitude. The event was exceeding their expectations, raising far more money than they had anticipated. But more importantly, it was bringing the community together, creating a sense of shared purpose, of celebration, of a collective commitment to preserving the legacy of the Caldwell farmhouse. The auction wasn't just a fundraiser, it was a community event, a celebration of Maple Ridge's history, its resilience, and its spirit of cooperation. And as the final item was sold, and the applause echoed through the barn, Faith and Jamie knew that they had not only secured the financial resources they needed to complete the farmhouse project, but they had also strengthened the bonds of community, created new friendships, and reaffirmed their commitment to building a future that honored the past and embraced the present. Chapter 19. Facing fears. The success of the auction provided a significant boost, both financially and emotionally. Faith and Jamie were able to complete the farmhouse renovations, furnish the bed and breakfast, and create a welcoming and comfortable space for their future guests. But as the grand opening approached, Faith found herself facing a resurgence of old fears, old insecurities, old doubts. She had poured her heart and soul into this project, had invested so much of herself, both financially and emotionally, that the fear of failure loomed large. She worried about attracting enough guests, about managing the day-to-day operations of the bed and breakfast, about living up to the expectations of the community, about preserving the legacy of the Caldwell farmhouse. She also worried about her relationship with Jamie, about the pressures of working together, about the potential for conflict, about the vulnerability of exposing their love, their partnership, to the public eye. One evening, as they were sitting in the newly renovated kitchen, surrounded by the warmth and beauty of the space they had created together, Faith's anxieties spilled over. "Jamie," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I am scared. What if we fail? What if we can't make this work?" Jamie reached out, taking her hand in his. His touch was warm, reassuring, a constant anchor in the midst of her swirling emotions. "Faith," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "we're not going to fail. We've come too far. We've worked too hard. We've built something amazing here." He paused, his gaze meeting hers. And he added, his voice soft, "We have each other. We'll face whatever comes our way.
Together."
But Faith's fears weren't just about the bed and breakfast. They were also about her relationship with Jamie, about the vulnerability of opening herself up to love, to commitment, to the possibility of heartbreak. What if I'm not good enough, Jamie?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "For you? For this life?" Jamie's expression softened, his eyes filled with love and understanding. He knew that her fears stemmed from her past experiences, from the insecurities that had been ingrained in her, from the fear of repeating old mistakes. "Faith," he said, his voice husky with emotion, "you are more than good enough. You're amazing. You're strong. You're resilient. You're the most incredible woman I've ever met." He paused, his gaze holding hers. And I love you, Faith," he said, "just the way you are. With all your fears, your doubts, your imperfections. Because those are the things that make you you." His words, spoken with such sincerity, such vulnerability, touched her deeply, melting away her fears, reassuring her of his love, of his unwavering belief in her. She realized that facing her fears wasn't about eliminating them, it was about acknowledging them, accepting them, and then moving forward anyway. It was about trusting in herself, in Jamie, in their love, in their ability to overcome any challenges that came their way. It wasn't a blind faith, but an informed faith. They'd proven their resilience. The facing of fears wasn't a one-time event, it was an ongoing process, a constant negotiation between doubt and confidence, between vulnerability and strength, between the fear of failure and the courage to pursue your dreams. And as Faith looked at Jamie, at his loving eyes, at his reassuring smile, she knew that she wasn't alone, that she had a partner, a love, a support system that would help her face her fears, one step at a time. Chapter 20. Community Spirit. The grand opening of the Caldwell farmhouse bed and breakfast arrived, a day filled with excitement, anticipation, and a palpable sense of community spirit. Faith and Jamie had worked tirelessly to prepare for this moment, transforming the crumbling farmhouse into a welcoming haven, a place where history and hospitality intertwined. The town of Maple Ridge, inspired by the farmhouse's restoration and the reconciliation between the Caldwells and the Millers, rallied to support the event. Local businesses donated food and drinks, musicians volunteered to perform, and residents offered their time and talents to help with the preparations. The day dawned bright and clear, the autumn air crisp and invigorating. Guests began to arrive, a mix of local residents, tourists, and representatives from historical societies and travel publications. They were greeted by Faith and Jamie, their faces beaming with pride and gratitude, their hearts overflowing with love for their community and for each other. The farmhouse, beautifully decorated with flowers, antiques, and photographs showcasing its history, was the center of attention. Guests wandered through the rooms, admiring the renovations, exploring the small museum, and learning about the Caldwell family and the history of Maple Ridge. The community garden, bursting with late-season vegetables and flowers, was another focal point, a testament to the collaborative spirit that had infused the project. Children played among the rows of plants, while adults chatted and shared gardening tips, their laughter echoing through the air. The event was more than just a grand opening. It was a celebration of community, of resilience, of the power of collaboration and forgiveness. It was a demonstration of what could be achieved when people came together, fengsha past grievances, and worked towards a common goal. Eleanor and David Miller were present, mingling with the guests, sharing stories about the old days, and expressing their appreciation for Faith and Jamie's efforts to preserve the history of the area. The animosity that had once defined their relationship with the Caldwells had dissipated, replaced by a cautious respect, a growing understanding, and a shared commitment to building a better future for Maple Ridge. Olivia, who had returned from college for the event, stood by her mother's side, her eyes shining with pride and admiration. She had witnessed firsthand the transformation of the farmhouse, the evolution of her mother's relationship with Jamie, and the healing of a community divided by years of conflict. As Faith looked around at the gathering, at the smiling faces, at the sense of unity and shared purpose, she felt a profound sense of gratitude, of accomplishment, of belonging. She had come to Maple Ridge seeking financial stability, a way to escape her past, a fresh start. But she had found so much more. She had found love, she had found family, she had found a community, and she had found her home. The community spirit wasn't just a backdrop to the event, it was the essence of it, the driving force behind the farmhouse's transformation, the foundation upon which Faith and Jamie had built their new life, their new love, their new future. And as the day drew to a close, and the guests began to depart, Faith knew that the grand opening was not just the end of a long journey, it was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter filled with promise, with hope, and with the enduring power of community to heal, to connect, and to inspire. Chapter 21. Harvest Festival. Following the successful grand opening, the Caldwell farmhouse bed and breakfast quickly gained a reputation as a charming and welcoming destination, attracting guests from near and far. Faith and Jamie, working as a seamless team, managed the day-to-day operations, ensuring that every guest felt comfortable, valued, and connected to the history and spirit of the farmhouse. As autumn deepened, the town of Maple Ridge began preparing for its annual Harvest Festival, a celebration of the season's bounty, a tradition that had been observed for generations. Faith and Jamie, eager to participate and contribute to the community, decided to host an event at the farmhouse, a harvest gathering that would showcase local produce, crafts, and music. They worked closely with other residents, including Eleanor and David Miller, to plan the event, transforming the farmhouse grounds into a festive space, with hay bales, pumpkins, corn stalks, and colorful decorations that reflected the spirit of the season. The harvest gathering was a resounding success, drawing a large crowd from Maple Ridge and beyond. Visitors enjoyed hair rides, pumpkin carving, apple cider pressing, live music, and a variety of local food and crafts. The event was a celebration of community, of tradition, of the simple pleasures of rural life. For Faith and Jamie, it was also a validation of their efforts, a confirmation that the farmhouse had become more than just a bed and breakfast. It had become a vital part of the community, a place where people could gather, connect, and celebrate together. For the Caldwells and the Millers, it was another step towards solidifying their reconciliation, a chance to work side by side, to share laughter and stories, to build new memories that would erase the bitterness of the past. Eleanor and Faith, in particular, found themselves bonding over shared tasks, exchanging recipes, and discovering a mutual appreciation for gardening and preserving the traditions of their families. As the day drew to a close, and the last of the visitors had departed, Faith, Jamie, Eleanor, David, Olivia, and Sarah gathered on the farmhouse porch, exhausted but exhilarated by the success of the event. Eleanor turned to Faith, her eyes filled with a warmth that had been absent for so many years. Thank you, Faith, she said, her voice sincere. For bringing this place back to life. For bringing us back together. Faith smiled, her heart overflowing with gratitude.
Thank you, Eleanor, she said.
For being willing to give us a chance.
For letting go of the past.
David added his own words of appreciation, acknowledging the positive impact that Faith and Jamie had had on the community, on his family, on his own life. You've shown us, he said, his voice a little gruff but filled with emotion, that it's possible to move on.
To forgive.
To build a better future. As they sat there, sharing stories and laughter, the past seemed distant, the future bright. The Harvest Festival wasn't just a celebration of the season, it was a celebration of renewal, of reconciliation, of the enduring power of community to heal old wounds and create new bonds. It was a testament to the transformative power of love, of forgiveness, of a shared commitment to building a future that honored the past, but was not defined by it. The farmhouse, once a symbol of division, had now become a symbol of unity, a place where the harvest of the land was matched by the harvest of hearts, mended and whole. Chapter 22. Coming home, the success of the harvest gathering and the continued positive reception of the bed and breakfast solidified Faith and Jamie's place in the Maple Ridge community. They were no longer seen as outsiders, as newcomers, but as valued members of the town, as integral parts of its social fabric, as keepers of its history and champions of its future. As the months passed, their relationship with the Millers deepened, evolving from cautious reconciliation to genuine friendship. They shared meals, celebrated holidays together, and supported each other through the ups and downs of life. The old feud, once a defining characteristic of their families' identities, faded into a distant memory, replaced by a shared commitment to building a better future for their community. Faith, in particular, found a deep sense of fulfillment in her new life. She had rediscovered her passion for nursing, volunteering at the local clinic, offering her skills and experience to those in need. She had also embraced her role as a small business owner, managing the bed and breakfast with efficiency and warmth, creating a welcoming space for guests from all walks of life. She had found a balance between her professional aspirations and her personal life, a harmony that had eluded her for so long. She was no longer driven by the relentless pursuit of career success. She was motivated by a deeper sense of purpose, by a desire to make a difference in the lives of others, by a commitment to building a strong and loving family. One crisp autumn evening, almost a year to the day since she had first arrived in Maple Ridge, Faith found herself standing on the porch of the farmhouse, looking out over the fields, the same fields where she had stood with her grandfather as a child, the same fields where she had made that solemn promise to keep the family legacy alive. Jamie joined her, wrapping his arm around her waist, pulling her close. He kissed her softly, his touch a constant reassurance of his love, his support, his unwavering presence in her life. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he said, his voice a low murmur, his gaze following hers towards the distant horizon. "It is," Faith agreed, her voice filled with emotion. "More beautiful than I ever imagined." She paused, her gaze shifting to meet his. "I never thought I'd be this happy, Jamie," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I thought I'd lost my chance. At it, love. At it, finding a place where I truly belonged." He smiled, his eyes filled with a tenderness that melted her heart. "You didn't lose your chance, Faith," he said. "You just took a detour. A long, winding detour that led you here. To me. To your home." His words resonated with her, a profound truth that she had finally come to understand. She had spent years searching for happiness, for fulfillment, for a sense of belonging, in all the wrong places. She had chased career success, financial security, a life that looked good on paper, but that had left her feeling empty and unfulfilled. And then, she had inherited a crumbling farmhouse, a place filled with memories, with challenges, with a history that had both burdened and blessed her. And in that unexpected inheritance, in that small, rural town, in the arms of this man, she had found everything she had been searching for. "I am home, Jamie," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "Finally home. Coming home wasn't just about returning to a place, it was about finding a place within yourself, a place within a community, a place within a relationship where you could be truly authentic, truly loved, truly at peace. And Faith, after years of searching, had finally found that place, in the heart of the Caldwell farmhouse, in the embrace of the man she loved, in the community that had welcomed her with open arms. The farmhouse, once a symbol of her past obligations, had now become a symbol of her present happiness and her future hopes. Chapter 23. Foundation of Love. Faith and Jamie's life at the Caldwell farmhouse settled into a rhythm of contentment, their days filled with the ordinary joys of rural life, the shared responsibilities of running the bed and breakfast, and the deepening love that bound them together. They continued to nurture their relationships with their families, with Olivia visiting frequently from college and growing closer to both Jamie and Chloe, and with the Millers, their bond strengthening with each passing season. The farmhouse became a hub of activity, hosting not only guests from afar but also community gatherings, holiday celebrations, and family events. The large kitchen, once the heart of the Caldwell family's home, was once again filled with the aroma of delicious food, the sounds of laughter, and the warmth of shared memories. One spring morning, as Faith and Jamie were working in the garden, planting flowers and vegetables, Jamie stopped, his gaze fixed on the farmhouse, his expression thoughtful. "You know, Faith," he said, "we've done a lot of work on this house. We've restored the structure, renovated the interior, created a beautiful space for our guests." He paused, his gaze meeting hers. "But the real foundation of this place," he continued, his voice soft, "it's not the bricks and mortar. It's us. It's our love. It's our family. It's the community we've built." Faith smiled, her heart swelling with love and gratitude for this man, for this life, for this place that had become their sanctuary. "You're right, Jamie," she said. "The house, it's just a building. It's the people who make it a home." He reached out, taking her hand in his touch sending a familiar warmth through her. "And we've built a strong foundation, Faith," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "A foundation of love, of trust, of shared dreams." He paused, his eyes searching hers. "I was thinking," he continued, maybe we should make it official." Again. Faith's breath caught in her throat. She knew what he was asking, and her heart overflowed with joy. They had talked about marriage before, but they had been so focused on the farmhouse renovations, on building their business, on navigating their blended family, that they had postponed the formal commitment. Are you asking me to marry you, Jamie Porter?" she asked, her voice teasing, but her eyes shining with tears. He grinned, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "I am Faith Caldwell," he said. "I am asking you to be my wife. Again. And this time for good." "Yes," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, Jamie. 1,000 times yes." He pulled her close, embracing her tightly, their bodies melding together, their hearts beating as one. They kissed, a slow, tender kiss that sealed their vows, their love, their promise of a lifetime together. They decided to have a small, intimate wedding ceremony in the garden of the farmhouse, surrounded by their closest friends and family. It would be a simple celebration, a reflection of their love, their commitment, their shared journey. As they began to plan the wedding, Faith realized that the foundation of love wasn't just a metaphor, it was the reality of their lives. It was the bedrock upon which they had built their relationship, their family, their community, their future. It was the strength that had sustained them through challenges, the bond that had united them in purpose, the love that had transformed a crumbling farmhouse into a vibrant home. And as she looked at Jamie, at his loving eyes, at his gentle smile, she knew that their foundation of love was strong, enduring, and capable of weathering any storm, of supporting any dream, of creating a future filled with happiness, with purpose, with a love that would last a lifetime. The farmhouse was a symbol, but they were the reality, a testament to the power of love to build, to heal, and to create a lasting legacy. Epilogue. 5 years later, The Caldwell farmhouse bed and breakfast was thriving, a testament to Faith and Jamie's hard work, their shared vision, and their unwavering commitment to creating a welcoming haven for guests and a vibrant hub for the Maple Ridge community. The farmhouse, beautifully restored and lovingly maintained, exuded a sense of warmth, history, and hospitality. The guest rooms were often booked months in advance, attracting visitors from all over the country, drawn by the charm of the setting, the reputation of the inn, and the heartwarming story of the couple who had brought it back to life. Faith and Jamie, now happily married for 4 years, were the heart and soul of the operation, their love for each other and for their community evident in every detail, from the freshly baked cookies in the kitchen to the carefully tended gardens surrounding the house. Olivia, now a college graduate, had pursued a career in nursing, inspired by her mother's dedication and compassion. She visited often, bringing friends and, eventually, a serious boyfriend to experience the magic of the farmhouse and the warmth of her extended family. Sarah Miller, now a confident and articulate young woman, had become a close friend of Olivia's, their families intertwined, their shared history a bond that transcended the old feud. She was studying history at a local college, inspired by the stories of the Caldwell farmhouse and the rich heritage of Maple Ridge. Eleanor and David Miller were regular visitors to the farmhouse, their initial awkwardness and resentment long gone, replaced by a genuine affection for Faith and Jamie and a shared pride in the revitalized community. The feud was a distant memory, a lesson learned, a reminder of the importance of forgiveness and reconciliation. One sunny afternoon, as Faith and Jamie were sitting on the porch, watching their grandchildren, 2 rambunctious toddlers, born to Olivia and Sarah respectively, playing in the garden, Faith turned to Jamie. "Remember when I first arrived here, Jamie?" she said, her voice filled with a mixture of nostalgia and gratitude. "I was so lost, so broken. I thought I was just coming here to sell a house." Jamie smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners, his hand reaching out to take hers. "And instead," he said, his voice soft, "you found a home. You found a family. You found me." Faith's heart swelled with love for this man, for this life, for this place that had become their sanctuary. "I found everything, Jamie," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "Everything I ever wanted. Everything I ever needed." She looked around, at the farmhouse, at the garden, at the children playing, at the fields stretching out towards the horizon, and she felt a profound sense of peace, of contentment, of belonging. She had come to Maple Ridge seeking a quick profit, a way to escape her financial troubles, a way to move on from her past. But she had found so much more. She had found a community, a purpose, a love that had transformed her life, a home that had healed her heart, a legacy that she would proudly pass on to future generations. The farmhouse, once a symbol of obligation and uncertainty, had become a symbol of hope, of resilience, of the enduring power of love to build a beautiful life from the foundations of the past. And as the sun set, casting a golden glow over the Virginia countryside, Faith knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be, surrounded by love, by family, by the enduring spirit of the Caldwell farmhouse.